All right, so welcome back to our watercolor unit. Today we're going to cover 4 more techniques with the same materials that we used in our last lesson. For this activity, again, you will need your watercolors and your brush, a small container of water, your round or circular palette, a piece of paper towel, some kind of pen, maybe a Sharpie, and another piece of drawing paper. This is the 9x12 drawing paper included in your kit. We are going to use watercolor paper in our next lesson. So we're going to push all of our supplies again off to the side. Go ahead and collect your supplies, pause the video, set yourself up, and then you're going to continue on with me. I'm going to push these off to the side and we're going to prepare our paper like we did in our last lesson. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to fold it in half in one direction. Make sure we really crease it. Open it back up and fold it in half in the other direction as well. We're making 4 more sections. In our last lesson, we talked about washes, wet on wet, wet on dry, and dry brushing. Today we're going to do 4 more. If you remember, my paper is sort of like propped up like this, so I'm actually going to bend those creases back on themselves so that my paper lays a little bit flatter. As you remember yesterday, we used the Sharpie to label our sections. We're going to do the same thing again. This one we're going to label number 1, and this one is going to be called illustration. Number 2 is going to be called water bleed, and I think you're really going to like this one. Number 3 down here is called blotting. And number 4 is actually going to be your choice. All right, we can put that pen off to the side and we can pull back into frame our materials. So, to begin, we're actually going to start over here in number 1 for illustration, and this is going to be a 2-parter. We're going to paint, we're going to let it dry, and then we're going to do some illustration on top. So you're going to choose any color that you want. I'm going to choose maybe orange today. You're going to activate your brush, move your brush around in the water, and then sort of pull off some of that water, go over to your color, activate the watercolor itself. And then I want you, oh, I splattered some, that's okay. I just want to create some kinds of weird blobby shapes. It doesn't matter what they are or what they look like, but create a few blobs. If you want to use a few colors, you can. I'm going to wash mine out. I'm going to add maybe a red one. A little red blobby over here. And that's it. Okay, we're gonna let that dry. It's okay that I splattered because I'm gonna illustrate. We're gonna work with those splatters a little bit later. Then wash that brush out. And you're gonna wanna make your brush into a nice shape. We haven't really done that just yet. Wash it out and then come off to the side and sort of manipulate that shape a little bit. So that's step 1 of illustration. We're gonna let that dry. Let's move over to number 2. That is our water bleed. So this is a really cool technique where we're actually just going to paint with the water first, and then we're going to tap into color and allow the color to bleed inside that water section. So my water is a little bit stained right now, but that's okay. I'm going to push my palette off to the side. So I'm going to take my water and I'm going to draw maybe a line here. Can't really see it, but I'm gonna draw a line in water and I'll do a circle. And then over here, I'll do a heart. I'm gonna fill that in. It's hard to see. I don't know if you can see it on this camera. I have a hard time seeing it right now. But I wanna make sure that there's a lot of water on that paper, but not so much that it's gonna like overflow and go crazy. Next, I'm gonna tap into one of my colors. Let's use red over here. I'm gonna load it up with a lot of pigment, and I'm gonna come over to where the water is, and I'm gonna tap, and it's gonna fly across that water. Wasn't that cool? It's really cool. Let's try a different one. Let's go over to blue. Let's do that in my heart. Tap, and it's gonna move around. The more pigment you have on your brush and the less water, the more it's gonna hydrate that and sort of move around. If you type watercolor into Instagram or TikTok, something like that, you're gonna see, and maybe water bleed, use that terminology, you're gonna see this happen. Oh, it's so cool. There's a lot of really cool videos of people doing this. And allowing that, oh, it's so cool. Allowing that to dry is a challenge. There's a lot of water there, but you can do it. Again, the more pigment you have and the less water on your brush, the better it's going to go. That one wasn't so great. Now you do need to start off with some clean water, right? I can try it one more time. I'll do like another, the cleaner water you can. Mine's kind of purple there. The better. Let's do another, we'll do an orange one. So cool. And that is called water bleed. All right, now that's gonna be hard to let it dry. So do be careful, especially after class when you put this off to dry. That's gonna take forever. So just sort of like work with it. I'm gonna push this up now. We're gonna move on to blotting, which is one of my favorite ones. For blotting, I'm gonna ask you to use blue for this. And I'm gonna ask you to use your palette. And we're gonna create a nice wash of color first, and then we're gonna blot with our paper towel. I'm gonna squish it up, and we're gonna blot with our paper towel. We're gonna pull up some of that pigment. And that's gonna create a really cool effect, and you're gonna instantly see what it's gonna be useful for. Let's go ahead and create a nice wash, maybe like a level 3.5. So I'm gonna come into my blue. I'm gonna add a little bit of blue here into my well. I'm gonna add some water. I want a lot of pigment here. I want this to be a dark wash. When I'm happy with my color, you can test it out and add more, but here you have to work fast, okay? So why don't you watch for a second and then you can work with me. You're going to come in here. That's a nice dark wash. You're going to apply your pigment. And again, you have to move fast with this. Ready? Apply our pigment, our wash. And then I'm gonna take my paper towel. I'm gonna sort of make a weird shape, and I'm gonna blot. And then tell me what you think this looks like. Move that around and blot. Move that around and blot that up. What does that look like to you? Oh, looks like a beautiful summer day. Some clouds, right? That is a nice quick little trick on how to make some clouds by using blotting. And we're gonna use that in one of our landscapes a little bit later. Isn't that nice? I'll move that around so you can see the shine is a little bit different. All right. So that was fast, wasn't it? We did illustration prep. Let me pull that back down. We did illustration prep, we experimented with water bleeding, and we just tackled blotting. Now we still need to let this dry, and I'm gonna probably have to pause this video, walk away, get a cup of tea, let this dry, and then come back. And I would encourage you to do the same if you need to. But down here, you also have this last section, which you can do right now, called choice. Now for choice, I want you to choose which one you wanna try again or combine, right? If I pull over our last lesson, we learned about washing, wet on wet, wet on dry, and dry brush. You can combine any of these with any of those over here in your choice. So I think I'm going to speed this video up a little bit and you can watch me paint for just a few seconds. All right, so as you can see, I did an additional water bleed here. That was really fun to play. It's doing some funky things, so I might have to play a little bit with that to sort of allow the color to sort of dry in the right way that I want it to dry in. And then down here, you can see I use a lot of water, and I actually did, let me pull this over, I did wet on wet again down here. Just playing, right, that sort of thing. I want to remind you of that really cool trick. Grab some paper towel. If you get something like this where there's like a lot of pooling and you don't like it, you don't want it to be that dark, you can dry off your brush, and then you can sort of like be a vacuum and suck it up, right? Like a thirsty little guy here. Suck up that water. You're gonna suck up that pigment as well, so it's not gonna be as dark, but it is a little trick to help you if it's like escaping you a little bit. All right, so go ahead and fill that up with whatever your choice is, whatever combination of things that you want. And then we're gonna allow this to dry completely over here in our illustration. We might have to wait overnight, something like that if we run out of time, and then we'll go back into that in just a few minutes. All right, so I'm gonna walk away, I'm gonna go relax and enjoy some time, and then I'll come back to this guy here. But for you, I'll see you in just a second. All right, so hello and welcome back. I actually went ahead and let my paper dry overnight. You can even see that my water bleed section is completely dry, and that's gonna be really important. So please take that opportunity to allow your whole piece of paper to dry out. For the very last bit of page 2, we're actually going to go back into number 1 here, illustration, with an additional material. And I'm going to be using a Sharpie Ultra Fine Point marker here. If I open it up, you can see that really nice fine tip there. All right, you can use any material that you want. I would encourage you to use a pen, but you can use a Sharpie marker if you want, a regular ballpoint pen, it does not matter. Our goal right here for number 1 is to go ahead and illustrate on top of what we already have here. Now, we went ahead right away and we just did some weird shapes over here in orange, and I used red. You could have used any color that you wanted. And our goal right now is to be inspired by what we see here and to illustrate or draw on top to sort of complete the picture. You can think of this kind of like when you lay in the grass in the summer and look up at the clouds and try and see shapes. Look at these shapes here that you have on your paper and see if you can pull out some information or use them as inspiration for some kind of drawing. So I'm going to take a few moments here. I'm going to look and understand what I see and add some kind of line work. I have a piece of paper here. I just want to give you some language for some line work. For pen drawing, we have a couple terms that we like to use. We have hatching or cross hatching. We talked a little bit about that a few weeks ago. And there's also something called stippling. And we're going to talk more about this later on in our watercolor unit when we really get into illustration. Just wanted to give you that language right in here. Hatching, cross hatching, and stippling. I actually see some cute little characters in here, so I'm going to just add a few lines here and there to sort of complete the picture. All right, so I just added a few lines here and there to sort of complete these little characters that I was seeing. I really was inspired by the idea of those clouds overhead like when I was a kid. All right, so that completes page 2. When you're done illustrating, whatever that means for you, go ahead and take a picture and you're going to submit this on Schoology. I hope you enjoyed these 4 opportunities to try out some different techniques. We're going to combine that with these 4 in our next project as we continue with our watercolor unit. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you next time.